So we won't enact any alternates tonight. We'll call the meeting to order. Wait, is Sue supposed to be here?
It says she's joining, but we are recording also, so.
Okay, so the meeting's called to order. Has everybody looked at the minutes?
Yep.
From the
Yes.
March 9th meeting? That goes back a ways.
So far, I can't remember what we did. So it must have been right.
Can I hear a motion to approve the minutes?
So moved.
Second, whatever.
Let's see, since we've only got video oh, you're recording the video too? Let's name who was first, made the first motion and the second.
We were talking at once, so I don't know.
I think I did.
Larry first and Sandy second.
I'll
Yeah, I'll
second
go
it.
third.
Sure.
Larry, Sandy.
All in favor?
Aye.
Zoom meeting.
Aye.
All in favor, raise your hand.
Aye. Oh, there's
Aye,
Sue.
aye, aye. All opposed? Okay, that's carried. How about May 18th meeting? Did everyone read their minutes, right?
Oh, yes.
Yes, we did.
Studied them for typos?
No. I sent in a couple of typo comments.
All right, thank you.
You.
And CJ, are you sure that you got them and have incorporated those?
The
There's Sue.
changes?
Sue is inaudible.
See if we can unmute her there.
So you need-
What was the question, Jerry?
Just wondering if we've received the changes from Tom on the May 18th.
Yes, yeah, sorry I responded, but nobody heard me.
So can I hear a motion to approve the minutes?
So moved.
Second,
Deb and Sandy.
Oops, I'm sorry, Deb and who?
Deb and
Sandy.
Sandy, okay.
On the first motion for the March 9th minutes, it was Larry and Sandy.
Larry and Sandy?
All in favor?
Aye.
aye.
All opposed? Opposed? Abstained? Okay, that's carried. Now let's get the June 8th minutes. Has everyone read it? Are there any corrections, comments? Can I
D.
hear a motion to approve them? A motion to approve the
So moved.
Deb. And who seconded it?
I'll second it.
Sandy seconds again.
You're coming around the plate?
And it's a home run.
So CJ, do we have anybody here that wants to talk to, from the public?
I don't see anyone in the waiting room other than applicants or owners who are already on the agenda for other minutes.
And actually, I'm on, oops, let me make sure I'm not muted. Yep. I am on the email, and I just had one email from Kurt, and he was wondering if the YouTube was live, and I said, yes, right now it is.
So this is the time that if anyone from the public wishes to speak, we'll give privilege of the floor, but I think if they haven't already contacted you and said that they wanted permission to come on, is that the way this works with Zoom meeting? CJ or Sue?
Or even if they were to email me before or during that privilege of the floor portion, I could always let you know.
Okay, well, we're going to cancel or end the privilege of the floor now because no one is here to take advantage of it.
Okay.
So we'll move into our first action item, Bretton Woods subdivision. Is Tim here?
Yes, we have the applicant and owner. Would you like me to admit them?
Yep. I assume that we are, this is our second or third meeting on this, third meeting or fourth meeting, I guess. So where are we standing here and why are they here?
So the applicant could speak to that, or would you prefer I speak to it, or? Sorry, wasn't sure who you were directing the question to.
Okay, Tim. Go ahead. Do you have something that you wanted to discuss with us?
Tim, you're on mute.
Can you unmute him, CJ?
I just did.
There we go.
Hear me now?
Yeah,
Okay, we're good.
there we go.
Hey, how are you?
I was beginning to feel lonely.
Okay, Tim, you have the floor.
All right, I'll try to be quick. We did do a revised submittal with the cluster package and a 60-foot right of way. It's pretty much what you saw last time, last month with the preliminary plat we did showing the conservation areas in the rear of the lots.
Uh-huh.
I did do the MPR for the storm drainage district. We answered, I made a response to T.G. Miller's initial comments on the same site plan. And we'd like to get the, just a direction from you guys and try to set up a public hearing and get the preliminary plat approved.
Anyone have any comments about the changes or any discussion? Do we want to set up a public hearing then? For when's the next available time? CJ?
Yes, the next meeting is Monday, July 27th.
So shall we set up a public hearing for, does anyone have any comments about this project? You all remember what's going on with it? Go ahead, Al.
I've got a question on the, between lot 7 and lot 8. It looks like the stormwater pond or catch basin for lot 7 is on lot 8. Was that there before?
Hang on, I'll call it up. Which lots now, Al?
7 and 8.
7 and
Yeah.
8. It looks like the
Yeah.
reservoir is on.
Yep, it's on the border, but it really doesn't matter because the town has blanket easements for, we'll have blanket easements for all these practices that are on the lot. So it doesn't really matter which lot it's on. Lot
Okay.
8 is quite wide. It's got more frontage. I think it's got almost 200 feet of frontage where the frontage on lot 7 is only 150. So it overlaps a little bit, but the lots aren't really confined. We've done that before with subdivisions where as long as it's going to be, if it were going to be privately owned, it'd be a big deal. But seeing how the town has the right to go in and enter and maintain, that should be fine.
Okay, all right.
Go ahead, Tom.
My understanding is there's a 20-foot easement surrounding basically the whole property. Is that right?
That's correct.
For the drainage? Is there
For the
any
cut-
possibility that some of that could be used as a trail for the people that live there?
Yeah, I think that was part of the idea with the conservation on the north end. So, so they can walk around and into the woods that are going to be left. So.
Okay.
And is that something that we need to prepare an easement for, Guy? Nope, maybe I don't have.
Do you still have the Trails Committee and all that? Is that still going on?
Yep, there's a new Parks, Recreation and Trails Advisory Committee. Yeah.
And,
So, I mean, oh, there he is. Hey, Guy.
Okay.
hey, Tim. As far as an easement for stormwater purposes, there will be a blanket easement over the entire site for all stormwater purposes. As far as lots 7's stormwater being on lot 8, lot 7 should have an easement over that portion of lot 8, since that's an individually maintained practice, even though the town can step in. And as far as dedicating part of the easement area for a trail, that's a specifically different purpose than stormwater, so that would take a separate easement. The stormwater easement could write in use as a trail, but normally the easements, if I give you an easement to run water and only water, it doesn't mean you can run electricity and sewer and whatever you want.
Right,
So
yeah.
it would have to be specific to a walkway or a trail, but that would not be difficult to do because you've already got a meets and bounds.
Okay. What we probably do is, I don't think the Brittons would have any problem with having the easement for the use of the residents of the subdivision, but they may have for outsiders of the subdivision. In other words, if you're a lot owner, you can use the trail, and that easement would reflect that, so that other people that are residents of that could enjoy the conservation areas. But I don't know. I'd have to speak with them about opening it up to the trail committee or something of that sort. The other issues, Guy, I think what I'll do is if it's going to be a big deal on that easement for the retention area there on crossing the lot line, I'll just move that lot line, because what we can do is we can make the lot 8 lot narrower and the lot 7 lot wider, and then we can take care of the problem that way. I have to have it downhill of the driveway in the house is what we're trying to do.
Yeah, I don't think it's a big deal. It's just the on-site stormwater systems are the responsibility of the individual
maintained,
homeowners.
right?
And the town would only step in the event there's a failure. And if no offense to our friend Dave, but if you had Hatfield in one lot and McCoy in the other, I think they wouldn't let them cross over to attend to the stormwater.
The shotguns would be out, so, okay. Yeah, it's an easy change to make.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and could you just remind me remind the board as you did recently for me, just the steps to establishing a drainage district? If needed.
Well, we're going to have a drainage district. I think that's what we did the map plan and report for.
Right, of course, but.
Well, the drainage district, you wouldn't actually start that process till after the final plat is approved, generally. Because if for some reason there was no subdivision, then there's no need for a drainage district. And the drainage district has to be based largely on what the final lot configuration and stormwater configuration is. There's some flexibility. It's not written in stone, but the map plan and report has been submitted. It's going to the Water and Sewer Advisory Board next month, I think. And it looks, I mean, there's a couple things I might change or tweak in it, but it doesn't need a lot of work to start the drainage district. But I think you got to get through at least the preliminary plat and preferably the final plat before you start forming a district, because you're creating a taxing authority. And if there's nothing to tax because there's no lots, there's not really a reason to be proceeding. So usually the drainage district comes after final plat approval and before ground disturbance and building permits are issued, depending upon how the SWIP is written.
Yeah, when CJ asked us to do a draft of it, just so everybody could take a look at it, which we did. So.
Yeah, we're in good shape there.
Good.
Thank you.
Okay, great. Hopefully that was helpful. Okay. Was there any other questions from the board on this? Otherwise, we'll ask for Ray Seal preliminary plats and schedule the public hearing. Okay.
That sounds good.
Can we also act on the preliminary plat that night, do you think? Unless there's major complications.
It's certainly up to the board, but we would presumably have preliminary and final preliminary plat approval
Okay.
that evening, I would anticipate,
Yeah.
unless I'm hearing from the board something to the contrary.
No,
I think that, what, have you got something, Larry?
nothing.
I
Oh,
think
no.
that we've been over it and I think it's looking pretty good.
Okay, great. I'm sure the Britons will be pleased. So,
Very
okay,
good.
any questions for me?
Nope, I think that we're in good shape.
All right, great. Thank you very much, folks.
This stuff
Thank
by
you.
Zoom.
Thank you.
Okay,
Bye.
Okay, thanks.
Bye now.
Thank you.
see ya.
Have a good night.
Good night, you too.
All right, CJ, we want to move into the Robert T. Marcus.
Yes, hold on just a moment. Okay, hold on just a moment. The applicant had just emailed me, so I think they were perhaps hoping to speak with you. This is kind of an unusual issue.
What is the issue exactly here?
Well, the land use ordinance says that any structure within less than 30 feet from the shoreline is subject to site plan review. Oh, there's Mr. Marcus who can speak to the project. But I believe that it will also need a referral to the Zoning Board of Appeals. I think that based on where the structure will be located, it's essentially just a kayak kind of paddlecraft shed. You can see it's about half a foot off of what would be the rear lot line, although the lot actually is bisected by the railroad. So this is very kind of an unusual situation. So nevertheless, let me admit Mr. Marcus here. Speak about the project. How about craft shed? You can see it's about half a foot. What was your lot line? Although the lot actually is bisected by the railroad. So this is very kind of an unusual situation. So nevertheless, let me admit Mr. Marcus here. Speak about the project.
Good evening. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Great.
How about craft
Hi,
shed?
how are you,
You
CJ?
can see it's about half a foot. What was your lot line?
What is that in the background?
Bisected by the railroad. So this is very kind of an unusual situation.
CJ, why are you smiling?
What is she doing?
It's not me. Somebody's got the speakers on there and we're getting to enjoy
Oh.
me speaking again and again ad infinitum. All right.
Okay, well, Mr. Marcus, tell us what you're trying to do here. Why are you smiling?
It's not me. Somebody's got the speakers on there and we're getting to enjoy me speaking again.
Yeah, if you guys can just mute if you're not talking.
Yeah, everybody mute.
Okay, let's try that again. Hi, good evening.
Okay, well, Mr. Marcus, tell us what you're trying to do here.
So what we're trying to do is put a shed up.
It's not me. Somebody's got the speakers on there and we're getting to enjoy me speaking again.
Just mute if you're not talking.
Yeah, everybody mute.
Yeah, Al, Doug, and Sue.
Okay, let's try that again. Hi, good evening.
Mr. Marcus, tell us what you're trying to do here.
So what we're trying to do is put a shed up.
It's not me. Somebody's got the speakers on there and we're getting to enjoy me speaking again.
Just mute if you're not talking.
Yeah, everybody mute.
I think the only thing worse than seeing yourself on video is hearing yourself repeatedly. What we're trying to do is put a shed
Bob, do you by chance have the YouTube channel open?
That's exactly what I have going on. My apologies. Let me turn it off. The only thing worse than seeing yourself on video is hearing yourself repeatedly. Okay. Wow, I am really sorry about that. I've been using Zoom for like 3 months every day, all day, and it's the only idiotic thing I've done. Okay, maybe a few other things than that. Good evening. My apologies for all that. Look, we own some land in Lansing off of Algerine Road in Cedar Cove. We've owned it a long time. This is the first summer we're actually trying to spend the summer down there because of what's going on. I've got young kids and camps were canceled and our travel plans are canceled. And so we did a scramble to create our own little camp there with some help. We're putting up some tent platforms. We've been working with Lynn Day to kind of get some stuff set up here for the summer. We went out and bought some kayaks and paddle boards and then realized that we had got no place to store them. I've got an 8x8 shed down on the waterfront that we built, I think it was 1996. And what we figured is we would just put up a larger shed in the same spot we originally built that first shed on, that would allow us to keep the stuff out of the sun, which largely you want to do, and also to secure it. People do walk up and down those railroad tracks, and you know, we certainly know that people end up on our dock and on our waterfront, which is not a big deal. But since we're now going to have equipment down there, we'd like to have it secured. Over the last 4 years, we've been trying to plan for actually to build a house on that side of the tracks. We've had extensive conversations with Lynn, extensive conversations with the railroad. Our understanding from the railroad is that we do not need a setback from the railroad, given that their property intersects ours, and we're pretty solid that that is the case. But obviously the town gets to decide what they care about. So what we're hoping to do is put a 12 by 16 gambrel roof shed up to be allowed to store, I think it's about 8 boats in total, some kayaks, canoes, and paddle boards. And recognizing that we've got to make sure that it's well out of the flood zone. Where it is around 386. It's somewhere between 385 and 386, where we're trying to put it. Our proposals to just add some gravel, raise that so that we're at 387.1, and have it in a place where it's reasonably secure. Through all the floods, we've never had anything go over the top of our dock, never gone anything over the timber frame wall that we put up 24 years ago. So what we're trying to do is put a shed that we can use to store paddle boards and toys. So that's what we're trying to do.
Will it have a concrete floor, pavers, or gravel?
A gravel. Normally these things you just build them on wood skids, 4x4 skids, and should you want us to attach it to the ground to sink something in, we can. We've got a lot of fill in that spot already behind the seawall, so we know we can put stuff down. We did some test boring up on top of the cliff and know exactly where the rock ledge is. It's not going to be anywhere near where we're putting this thing on, and we're just really trying to set it on top.
So Bob, this is going to be a freestanding shed with a wood floor that's going to sit on top of gravel.
You got it.
Okay.
For your own protection, you may want to put some anchors down.
Yeah,
I mean, easy down there.
Sure, and I think we could easily do that if that's your preference. Again, when we first put the shed up, it didn't feel like we needed that. Where it is now, we've got the shed on a platform. I'm actually less comfortable now every year as the flood seems to be coming up a little. So we're thinking about maybe just trashing that shed altogether. But I don't want to do that unless we can get another shed up. So,
of course, any requirement for anchors would be all up to Lynn, but my years in construction, I just kind of think it would be a good idea.
You're probably right, especially given the size of the shed. It probably wouldn't be bad to anchor it down.
Yeah, it's required to have a flood development permit. So that's part of the package you should have received was that application, I believe Mr. Marcus included in it. My question, and this was a matter, I suppose, of interpretation. As you can see on the proposed site plan, the dock is approximately half a foot from the Norfolk Southern Railroad line. Now, as I understand it from Lynn, we spoke about this yesterday, he would still consider that the rear lot line. Because for properties that front Cuga Lake, the front yard is considered the lake.
So you mean
So
the shed is a half a foot from the line? You
that's
said the
correct.
dock, but you mean the shed?
The shed.
Yes, I'm sorry. Yes, that was my error. The proposed new shed would be a half a foot from what we have interpreted to be the rear lot line. Now, we essentially would ask the applicant then to apply to the Zoning Board of Appeals, for which you could give a recommendation. So that's how essentially I'm interpreting this, but I could be wrong. So I asked Guy to be here to help with things like this.
I'm
Well-
assuming the crosshatch we're looking at is the roof overhang all the way around, not the floor plan.
Correct. Actually, the roof, usually well, it would be the roof line. It'd be the roof line. It's 16 feet and the inside is less than 12. So it's the roof line.
So CJ, why were you saying that we are interpreting that as the lot line? I take it
Well,
that the difference between the land that Mr. Marcus owns and the railroad land?
yes, the land is, so this larger property is joined together across the Norfolk Southern Railroad. So essentially the railroad bisects this land, not perfectly. There's kind of a little sliver on the lake shore, and then the remainder of the property is on the other side of the railroad. But however, the placement of the proposed shed is being only a half a foot from the rear lot line, is essentially too close as far as I'm understanding it.
So the lot line is actually a lot line and not an easement line or anything like that.
In that section, it is a lot line. There's another part of our thing where it's a right of way, but my guess is because there's a splitter up near where the railroad, for the railroad, there they made it it's owned property. It's owned by Norfolk. So.
You want to run that again, please?
There's places along the lake where the railroad has just a right of way, and there are places where the railroad owns the land.
Are
like
places where they own.
Exactly. And this piece where we're proposing, they own the property. But
So you're leasing from them?
no, I'm sorry. They own on their side of the
see.
lot line. Yeah.
Okay. So it's not,
However, the railroad, as far as the railroad's concerned, they require no setback. Town might, but the
Yeah.
railroad does not.
So this could be, oh, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Question for Guy.
Go ahead.
Injecting a little common sense in this.
oh no.
Main reason for side and rear yard setbacks are to allow access of emergency vehicles around a building in case for fire protection. You have a piece of property here where no construction is allowed on it, the property owned by the railroad. The railroad itself has no regulations requiring a specific setback according to Mr. Marcus. And in essence, we're also talking about a semi-permanent structure. So does any of that have a bearing, Guy?
Well, as I sit here, I'm looking at the land use ordinance, and this is L1 with lake frontage. And so I'm seeing a rear lot setback, a rear line of 25 feet, which obviously doesn't exist anywhere on the lot if you interpret the railroad as the back lot. And it note number 12, which says detached storage buildings with less than 200 square feet in area and less than 12 feet in height may be 10 feet from the lot, which still doesn't change anything. So to me, to me, the underlying legal question might be, is this lot separate and distinct from quote unquote its connected parent parcel? In other words, there's a lot of conditions like this on all of the Finger Lakes, where, for instance, on Owasco, on Owasco Lake on the west shore, where you get to like Fays Point and some of those places where the house is across the street and a continuation of the lot is on the other side of Route 38 or Route 38A. And here, that's sort of the same scenario. It's simply not a highway. Well, technically it is a highway. That's how railroads, that's why they're called rights of way. But so the question is it one and the same lot such that the railroad should be disregarded? Or is it a separate lot such that it stands alone and meets all setback requirements independently? If you interpret this lot as being a standalone, meeting all setback requirements separately, there's not a single setback requirement it could ever meet, and all matters, whether they're accessory or primary uses, must go to the ZBA. If you consider it part of the parent parcel and measure its distance from the back lot line, which would be, if you consider the front of the lot the lake, then would this be, where would the front yard be? And so I know that we're starting to get into semantics, and ultimately it falls to the zoning officer to determine what is the front and what is the rear lot. But it seems to me that if you beg the question and try to define this as some other lot line and not part of a larger parcel, then you will always end up going to the ZBA, no matter what you go to install. And maybe that's the curse of having a gore of land attached to your primary title. Maybe that's the curse of a de facto subdivision by the railroad having taken title back in the 1920s. Right. But I'm not sure this is probably the most efficient way to handle it, but it's not for the planning board to decide what zoning does apply. It's for the planning board to review the application before it and hear whether you call it a front lot line or whether you call it a rear lot line. It's still going to have to go for a review.
Well, all that being the case, neither the stair or the dock fulfill that requirement either.
And they exist now, whether they received their variances or whether they received their building permits or whether at that time the zoning wasn't interpreted that way. I couldn't answer that.
But I got a question, Bob. That is a separate tax parcel on the lake side compared to the land on the other side of the track, isn't it?
It is not it is a single tax. The other taxable parcel is the road, actually, that I share with some neighbors. So this is attached from a tax standpoint to 85, 87 of land.
So it's not a separate tax parcel?
It is not a separate tax.
Okay. But you do own the property where you're constructing the shed. The railroad doesn't own it then, right?
No, correct.
Okay.
Correct. Yeah, so this is our parcel. It's part of certainly part of the value of the whole parcel. And I don't know that you could sell it as a separate parcel.
Well,
Part of the Dunkelsbuehler thing split up.
Exactly. I bought it from Peter, 25 years ago.
Al?
Larry?
Yeah, Jerry, I wouldn't have, personally, this is a suggestion on my part, I wouldn't have any problem with making a recommendation to the Board of Zoning Appeals that they would allow a variance in this case, because basically there's no place else on that section that will fulfill the strict letter of the ordinance, number one. Number two, existing structures are already within those lines. Number three, it's consistent with other properties on the side of the lake where the railroad owns a strip of property right through some lots. I don't see it as doing any harm. I don't see it as being any harm for the town. But that's that's just a suggestion on my part.
And number 4, it's not a permanent structure. It's on skids.
Yep.
So there's no foundation going in.
I can't see it in the picture, but I believe you referenced a smaller shed that was already on site. Am I?
I think it's on the proposed
It's on
site
the left
plan.
side of the lot.
Okay.
Yep. It's set
And
back in the northern.
It's again within the front yard setback. It's the only structure there that does miss the rear lot setback,
Mhm.
but it's within the front lot setback.
Yeah, everybody's unhappy there.
I'm sure it's just such a earth-shattering, yeah, well, you know, it's important.
All right, so we're at a point where we need to go to the, this is gonna have to go in front of the Board of Zoning Appeals. Is that correct, CJ?
That's been the determination by the zoning officer and myself, yes.
Because we're taking the railroad's line as being the rear lot line. And in fact, the front lot line isn't gonna make it to the lake, is that correct? I mean, the sides will work, but the front and rear are not correct for the zone that it's in.
That's correct. And that's my understanding after them
So are
speaking
we
with Lynn
looking
as well.
for a recommendation from this board to the Board of Zoning Appeals that we either recommend that they approve or deny?
So moved.
Want to give them some sort of reason, or
I would not have any problem making the motion with the reasons that you and I stated before. The
I
4
agree.
specific reasons.
I would agree with Larry.
so does that mean you made a motion, Larry?
Yep.
I'll second.
A motion would include the 4th reason given by Jerry about a non-permanent structure.
If I could, I would also add a 5th reason, and the fact is that he has to be behind the seawall.
And out of the floodplain or
Yeah.
the high water mark.
Right, and it's an accessory structure. It's not like it's a dwelling.
There certainly is no sewage.
We
Let's
won't
not
talk
talk.
about that.
Okay, Larry's made a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Opposed? Abstain? CJ, can you or Sue make up the resolution?
The motion? for-
Yeah.
Yeah.
Pardon?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you very much, Mr. Marcus.
Thank you, my neighbors. Have a great evening.
We will see what happens with the zoning board of appeals.
Yes, we will. Thanks a lot. Have a good evening.
So next we move on to the
Gray barn.
Gray Barn.
Yeah.
Okay, we'll admit the applicant.
I've got a question.
Go ahead. Go ahead,
Were the neighbors notified of this change? CJ? Were the neighbors notified of this proposed change?
We have not
no.
done a public hearing, so we've not sent out
Nope.
any
You
notification.
you haven't sent out any notice in, okay.
No, but we certainly, as the board desires, are happy to do that.
So we're just making a change of use of an existing building with pretty much no, well, go ahead. I'm sorry, I don't have your name on here.
Yeah, my name is Jay Williamson.
Okay. Go ahead and explain to us what you're about here.
Okay, we are looking at purchasing the gray barn on 34B and changing the use to be a professional office space, which would be low traffic, and don't foresee having to make significant external modifications.
Parking is sufficient?
I think that it is. Am I right that a parking space is 9 foot by 18 feet?
Usually I do them 9 foot by 20 or 10 by 18.
Okay. So I guess the answer is yes, I think it will be fine. We have 4 total employees. At any one time, 1 or more of them is out away from the office visiting clients at their locations. So we don't anticipate having parking issues.
Point of fact, that's used to be retail, and with the same parking lot, it handled a fairly high traffic or high rate of traffic. It was listed for a while as an Airbnb, and currently, as of today, is still advertised on VRBO as a short-term rental property. I've been around long enough that I haven't seen any issues created by any traffic coming in or out of there. And to the best of my recollection, that is an allowable use in that zone.
Is that correct, CJ?
Yes, that's correct. That would be a professional / business office.
So we're talking about a change of residency and allowable use and no major change to the structure or the parking.
There's some minor changes to the parking as per Code Enforcement Officer Lynn Day did stipulate that there had to be I believe, 1 handicap accessible spot. And I think Lynn actually went out to the building recently, right? And took a look with you about I think there's some building code updates that they'll have to do, but otherwise it's just a change in use.
How about exterior lighting? Is it a change?
We don't anticipate changing the lighting on any signs. We'll, if Lynn specifies that we have to put lighting in the parking lot, we would certainly do that to be in compliant with code, but it's predominantly an 8:30 to 5 business, and so we'll kind of react to what Lynn says in terms of complying with the code for external lighting.
So I don't see any problem here. Does anyone else see a snag?
I don't.
No, it looks very straightforward, a good use of the site.
I'm
CJ,
glad it's
what
going
do
to
we
be
do from
used.
here?
Huh?
Right.
Yeah, so I wasn't sure the extent to which the board may have questions. So we anticipated the action this month might be preliminary and final approval. And to that end, there is a resolution for your consideration.
Al talked about public hearing, notification. Do we want to move past that and just approve this?
You can set a public hearing if you wish, of course. We're happy to do that, publish that, and hold that at the end of next month.
I think it's a good idea.
They have a public hearing?
Yes,
Yeah.
that's been our precedence.
Mhm.
I'm a novice at this. What are the outcomes of a public hearing? This is new to me, so use the naive question.
The way a public hearing works is the members of the public that have a concern come and voice that concern to the planning board. There's no dialogue with the planning board, but the planning board considers the concerns and weighs that with what the ordinance has to say about the land use in that area. If there are valid concerns brought up, the planning board may choose to go back to you and talk about them. But in a sense, there's no real dialogue between the public and the planning board at a public hearing. The public voices any concerns or questions they may have. If there are questions, they can be answered, usually by the developer, because the developer is usually there at the meeting. But then when the hearing is over, the planning board considers all the information and makes a decision. Did I speak wrongly there, folks? Is that pretty much your understanding as well?
Correct.
And I don't really see any change that affects the surrounding neighborhood here. From the retail that it used to be to the hostelry that it is now to these offices seems to me to be all very low impact, not really something that's going to impact the neighbors at all. I'm open to being convinced otherwise, though.
My only concern just is we put this in our purchase offer as the sort of final contingency, and we have a closing date set. And my only concern, which is purely selfish, not anything more, is trying to get things resolved in time for an August closing date, so that we can get contractors in for anything that needs to be done internally and get started. So if a public hearing is in order, certainly I have to defer to you all, but I know the neighbor, Paul Geisler, and Adam Buck and I were talking this week about it, and I've heard nothing but positive comments. So I'd love to skip a step, but I don't want to have anybody bending any rules that are in the best interest of the town of Lansing.
I have no interest in a public hearing, but I was just echoing Al's concern about notification. That's all.
Okay.
Thank you. As I recall the site, there aren't that many close neighbors that would be affected at all.
Isn't there only one across the street?
Yeah, and
one right behind it.
Is there one behind them?
There's one right behind it. The house was built by the people that built the barn that had the retail business there.
Yeah,
they're all good sized lots.
Yeah.
No one's close.
Cindy?
Yeah, the only two neighbors I know of are Adam, the Buck family, and Paul Geisler and his wife, who was my son's college advisor, who's right next door. And they've both been, very favorable toward this. So I'm hopeful that we can get started.
I think it's certainly probably going to be a much more quiet enjoyment of the property than other uses.
Can I ask what triggered site plan review in the first instance, given 701.7.12? Because 701.7.12 says, notwithstanding any other provision of this article, planning board approval of a modification of the site plan shall not be required if the modification only involves the construction, alteration, or renovation of the interior of a building, regardless of whether the change or occupancy of use is involved, and none of the limitations of this section 701 are exceeded. So unless you've exceeded an allowed limitation in section 701 or exceeded a condition that's in a prior site plan review, a change of use, as long as the changeover is on the interior and it's an allowed use, doesn't trigger site plan review. So I see that we're in site plan review and now we're going to a public hearing, and I'm trying to figure out in terms of what questions might come up, what is it that's going to be reviewed?
Yeah, your question about why are we doing site plan review was, we suspected that zoning would ask for a handicap parking permit or handicap parking space. We just figured that would probably be expected, and so that's external, and that's why we
okay. Yeah, I'm just curious. So
Well,
So echoing an earlier comment, I guess my question is, do we want to have a public hearing about creating 1 or 2 handicap spaces? Because the use is allowed.
When you put it
So,
that way.
I get the idea of making sure the public is aware, but if in terms of impact from where I sit and having participated in activities at the Gray Barn, this is going to be from not my place to say because I'm not on the board, but this is actually a reduction in potential impacts from other uses that have been there and could still be there.
Are you trying to say you attended some rowdy parties there, Guy?
No, I was, I believe that for a while my CSA was distributed there, so they had traffic in and out.
Okay.
Oh,
The only thing, when you started talking about this, the only reason I would say would have said was because of the external work. As much as I love public hearings, I would be certainly amenable to waiving a public hearing in this case.
I'm good with that.
I
yeah.
am too. Yeah.
I want to hear from Sandy, though.
So is my understanding the public hearing, the notification goes to people within 600 feet? Is that right? 600 feet? And it sounds like those that are within that range already know about it. So, and since they know about it, I'm fine to waive it. I didn't know that at the time of my comment, I didn't know that they were already aware of this change.
I do have a question about it. The Brick House, the place with the dance hall on the second floor there, isn't that a multiple? It has a spring-loaded dance floor on the second floor.
3rd floor.
Isn't that a multiple family residence at this point?
I think they're running it as a Airbnb.
Makes
We
my
get them
point.
off the reservation.
I don't think they came before the board for a public hearing for that.
Has any Airbnbs come before the planning board?
No.
No, but it was a change.
One did.
One
They
did.
were Myers and they were shot down, so.
Myers.
Yeah.
In Ladoga, wasn't it?
Okay, has everybody read I think we're all in agreement that a public hearing is not, this is not the kind of instance that public hearings were set up for. Are we in agreement there?
Yeah,
Yes.
I believe we have to move that we waive the public hearing, and I would so move.
Yep.
Second.
CJ, you wanted to say something?
Yeah, so your public hearing is not required. It's may is the word that's in the site plan section. So that's why I went with no public
Okay,
hearing.
so
But
we
I did
move-
just want to, I just want to address Guy's comment, which was about the modification of site plan, is that this property, I don't believe ever went through a previous site plan review before for the various sundry uses that had occurred there. So we made the determination that because it had never gone through site plan review before, and there was not a site plan in effect, essentially to modify, that they would be subject to site plan. But
So
we can
does the-
definitely argue the finer points of that.
Does the planning department see any issues here?
Nope.
Okay, so has everyone read the resolution?
Yep.
And do we have any corrections or is there any discussion about it?
Nope.
Dean?
All looks good to me.
I move we pass the resolution.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 All
Aye.
opposed?
Hey,
Abstained?
I really am supposed to do a roll call on this.
Okay.
Okay,
Okay, so Sandy,
yes.
Al,
Yes.
Larry,
Yes.
Dean,
Yes.
Deborah,
Yes.
and actually I missed, for some reason I have Tom in here. So it's Lynn Davidson. Okay, Lynn
Yes.
and Jerry.
And Al?
Yeah, said yes.
Yes, I got Al.
Again.
Yes,
Okay, thank you.
you're welcome. Thank you very much, Jay.
Well, thank you all. I appreciate your time.
Great use of the property.
Yeah, now that I know there's a dance floor across the road, it changes all sorts of options.
But there's no elevator to the 3rd floor, so watch it.
As long as I don't have to see Guy dancing at the dance floor, I'm fine with all of it.
That was an old use. I believe that the springs were taken out when they had the fire in that section about 30 years ago.
Oh, dear God.
Well, I'll let you get on with your evening, folks. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Yep.
All right, so we've got a pop-up temporary drive-in movie theater. We want to bring Kevin Sullivan in.
Yep.
Hello, Kevin.
Hey, everyone.
All right, explain to us what your idea is here to make some money when you're closed.
Thankfully not closed, but yes, try to keep people employed and, trying to find kind of every creative way we can come up with during this crisis to do that. So we connected with Russ and the team up at the Lansing Community Rec Center and proposed an idea. We had been kind of looking around the city of Ithaca for some spots and working with them. And we were having a little bit of trouble finding a suitable parking lot that had enough spaces that we could pay adequately enough to have enough space. So we ended up there talking to Russ and thought it would be a great use of that property when we're closed, and also the possibility of kind of a long-term, occasional weekend thing and years to come if it were to be a popular thing for the community to keep participate in.
So you've talked to the health department already, is that right? About this?
That is correct. We started that conversation back in mid-April with them just to, see what was involved as the phases progressed and guidance was given by New York State about the, any kind of outdoor viewing of movies.
And they're okay with what you've proposed, is my understanding. Is that right?
Yep. Went right up to the head of sanitation over there through Christy Morgan, and I forwarded over CJ that email chain and her contact in case any questions came up. But we're operating in this crisis, and we have been the whole time. So we're very, very aware of how to make sure that all the crowd control stuff is in place. And the number one thing about that is to just keep people in their own space. So we have a pretty good plan, and we're very confident in our ability to execute that because people in Tompkins County are behaving themselves in the great majority.
Yeah.
CJ, does planning have any issues with this?
The only comments,
Adult movie issue, of course. Adult movie.
well,
I read it that same way, Jerry.
Well, adult movie house.
That's just the people involved.
Right, not the subject matter.
there was some questions from town engineers about the specs for the installation of the screen. There was just some concern that, of course, it wouldn't become airborne or
Well, that's
something that could be, hazardous, essentially. So I believe that you've indicated on the project narrative what the size of the screen is and how it would be secured. So I think if you could just provide a little bit more detail, perhaps a spec of that, I think that would, we can then refer that to the engineers and they can give their blessing on that.
There was great song and dance about this property and its renewal for, or is that the rink vis-a-vis the field? Remember there was quite a dance, Larry, back in the day?
Yeah.
Is that Am I got things mixed up?
Yeah.
There was a lot of concern when we talked about the climbing wall, and some of the neighbors over on East Shore Circle were extremely concerned with noise.
And the soccer field out back, is that still being used as a soccer field?
I don't know.
So,
I just remember there was an every 2-year renewal, right, for the soccer field?
Seems like that's what it was.
In other words, there were neighbors that maybe ought to be contacted. I think it's a great idea. Don't get me wrong. I'm for it. I remember there was a little bit of issue down there.
What about the lighting from the screen? Is that, how close are the neighbors? Is that going to impact them?
The lighting on the screen looks like, from the positioning of the screen, would be reflecting back on the Rink building and not on any of the neighboring houses.
Okay.
I would also ask about the sound, but I'm assuming it's going to be FM radio transmission. Is that correct?
Mhm.
I did have a question about that. My car radio doesn't work when the car's turned off.
So
Does that mean I can't come to the drive-in?
And be careful.
Just bring jumper cables.
They'll have a silent movie night for you.
Oh, good.
You can bring one of those little transistor radios with a battery in it.
Oh, I've heard about them.
Yeah, I know they're before your time.
I do have a serious question though. Maybe it's just my little Subaru, but as soon as I turn the thing off, the radio goes bluey.
You have to leave it running for the air conditioning anyway.
But it does say in the proposal, the cars will not be running.
That's right.
All you have to do is set your ignition key to accessory.
Yeah.
Key? I got me a little button.
You.
Push the button without your brake on.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh God, I gotta try that.
Do we have hours of operation?
I've got a question on,
Yeah.
Go ahead, Dean, on the hours of operation.
Yeah, are there planned hours of operation?
Yeah, it's listed in
in
the
there.
I
proposal,
didn't see it.
page 2. Just 3
Wow.
nights a week, Thursday, Friday, and Saturday.
Oh yeah.
I don't think we can address that, can we, Guy?
Generally, no. Hours of operation are usually aspects regarding the regulation of the use and like how you run the business. So normally you can't tell a restaurant as part of site plan review when to close or a theater when to close. Normally movie theaters, by their nature, they have some traffic and they have public participation and they have retail and they're usually at night. So I don't know what hours of operation you'd want to regulate, considering that it's probably not dark enough to air a film until 9 o'clock anyway. So I assume you're not doing like triple features like the Auburn Drive-In, and these are just single shot movies. But again, because it's outdoors, it's sort of like there's probably a little more leeway to do that, like you can with drive-throughs. You may not be able to regulate how long a restaurant is open, but you can determine whether or not you want to allow a drive-through if your zoning permits it. But normally regulating the hours of operation of a business, if it's an allowed use, is a very, you have very limited authority in that respect, because the law recognizes that that's regulating the operation of the business and not the underlying use of the land. But there's cases going all over the place on that. That's the general rule. If you have a unique situation, obviously if you've allowed outdoor movie theaters next to, nursing home facilities, that might be a problem in your zoning, not necessarily a problem of business regulation, but I don't think that's the situation here. It's up to you to determine whether and to what extent there's any type of buffering that's needed, given the orientation of the screen, the FM broadcast of sound, and whatever else might be involved behind the building or in that parking lot.
It's also on a major connector. It has traffic all the time anyway. So I'm just bringing it up that it.
Yeah, I think I mean, within reason you can do it, but normally it's a topic that if you look at the bulk of the case law, it most of the time says it's best to avoid it. And there's a fair amount of precedent on things like theaters, like the Robert E. Lee Realty case was a theater case. And again, if it's an allowed use in the zone, then, you can't really regulate it based upon what that allowed use normally has as an impact. In other words, if you allow pizza restaurants, you can't say, well, we don't want to have pizza shops because there'll be too much takeout. That's the nature of that restaurant. It's going to have a lot of takeout business. If you don't want that, you don't want restaurants in the zone, then don't put restaurants in the zone is sort of the answer.
Al, you had a question?
Yeah, well, if the gym or the rink or the field opens up, will this be used at the same time that those facilities will be in use?
I don't believe it could be in full capacity, no. During the summertime, the traffic to that facility definitely reduces in comparison to peak winter skating season and times like that when a lot of recreation heads that way. So from what I've heard from Russ there, they don't believe that we'll have a lot of crossover just because that facility is greatly underutilized during the summer months.
Okay, so but if you're successful and as you get towards the fall and you're still doing it and the gym opens up and the field opens up, there may be a little bit of conflict with your bathroom location and your concession location, no?
Without question. So we're not anticipating both being able to operate simultaneously the way that was initially set up.
Okay.
If successful, then we would strip down some of that stuff and kind of compact it because the regulations around concessions would then be loosened as the regulations loosened on, for example, large scale activities and contact sports, etc.
Okay.
Any other questions or comments?
Will you advertise on the rink sign? Is that, I just wonder if there's going to be additional signage or anything like that.
Yep. No additional signage. They would advertise right on there. Most of the advertising we would expect would be done via social media. These days, in many people's view, unfortunate, mine too, a lot of people are more connected to social media and their phones than ever before. That being said, the drive-by signage isn't quite as impactful as the phones these days to get to people.
TJ, I don't see any reference to the Board of Zoning Appeals, so, based on my memory and based on that, I'm assuming this is an allowed use.
Yes, the theater is an allowed use in this zone. And we did indicate, or we anticipated that the planning board would see this as an unlisted action. At first, there was some question about whether it was really temporary, how temporary is temporary. But at the guy's advice, given that there would be something of a regular recurring impact, to classify this as an unlisted action. So that's why you have a declaration of lead agency before you this evening. So if it pleases the board, we can set the public hearing for next meeting and assume preliminary and final approval. We did receive comments back from county planning already for the 239 review, and they indicated that that has no negative intercommunity or countywide impacts already. So
I move that we declare lead agency status.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Opposed? Abstain? Okay, we're the lead agency. And do we need a motion to go for this public hearing, or is that just the next step?
You could certainly make a motion if you wish, but we will also go ahead and just set that public hearing for you.
We'll set a public hearing for the next meeting. Does anyone else have any questions for Kevin? I would like to know on the, how many cars do you expect? And how much room do you have to put them, and what kind of signage would you use to get people in and out?
Yeah, so the parking lot, and you guys would probably know if somebody looked it up better than me, but it's approximately 300 spaces based on what I've seen. We would be proposing to put approximately 50 vehicles in the space, which is obviously a significant number of that lot. But you know, the space is the key, and also finding it a spot that we can actually face the screen away from the road. That's the big safety concern is from our side, is just to make sure that you know, cars driving down the road, you know, don't decide to tune in for 10, 20 seconds as they're driving and end up in the ditch. So we've chosen our spot carefully on where a screen placement is to aim that away from the road.
So there won't be any parking alongside the road while you're moving.
Correct.
And you're going to have parking attendants. You'll certainly have people getting on and off and directing traffic.
Yep. We would be cross-utilizing, you know, people to essentially park the cars and then also guide them out, you know, at the end with, you know, safety vests, lighting, all that stuff.
I'm curious, what do you expect to charge per vehicle?
You know, we're looking at kind of charging a cheap single price, and then cheap single price for a car with one person in it. And then as it goes up, we would charge, I think it maxes out at $25 for a vehicle, and that would be up to 6 people. So you get a deal if you bring your family, basically. So they pack, you know, pack 3 or 4 kids in the back, they don't get charged per person.
You don't have to put them in a trunk to get in the old days.
Dating.
Been there, done that.
Never room for anybody in the trunk. That's where we put the beer.
I do just want to make one comment, just as we're talking about a public hearing. You know, this initial time frame, we were hoping obviously to get this launched sooner. I think that if we ended up at an end of July date, this would become no longer feasible to do on this location.
I don't think there's any way we can do it at this point without a public hearing.
And I can agree with
Jerry.
We have to have one at the next, the best we can do is to advertise it as soon as possible and have it at the next meeting.
We should be able to approve it after that. Am I correct?
As long as the public doesn't bring up any problems, I foresee no problems. I think it'd be great, and I'd like to go.
That would be Monday.
Well, there'll always be a problem. People always have an objection to somebody else coming up with a good idea.
Let's see how this impacts the public.
If the board wishes, you could use part of the working meeting on Monday, July 13th, if you'd like to set a public hearing then, not pushing the matter.
Yeah, let's try and get it done as soon as possible if we can.
Sounds good. I think the board's in agreement, CJ.
Okay, so the board would like to set the public hearing for the pop-up temporary drive-in movie theater for Monday, July 13th.
Yes.
Okay.
Correct.
Need a vote?
All right.
Thank you.
I assume we'll see you on July 13th.
I'll be there.
All right.
Thank
Have
you.
a good day, and this is a pretty good idea, I think.
DJ, question. There should be, but is there an absolute requirement for review of the screen support design by the town engineer? What I saw described as the support design was, to me, considering a 20 by 30, a 600 square foot sale area was pretty flimsy.
I'd leave it up to Lynn, but that's just me. I think it's pretty basic.
Was it comments from one of the town engineers regarding the fasteners and just concerned about the wind? So just passing those comments on from the engineers. So I don't have any particular comment about that, but if they, request those things, then I, just pass that on to you for consideration, of course, to the applicant. Oh, Larry's frozen.
So Kevin, you may want to come up with a particular design in the meantime that's specified, exactly how you're going to hold this thing down.
Or we purchased one specifically for this reason. And my thought is it would certainly be helpful to us because obviously our goal is for safety as well. Maybe to have Lynn take a look at it, set it up, just get it all set so he can check it out, show him how we're going to cable it down. Because we do plan on doing that anyway, just to, do a trial run before we actually have to set this thing up and show a movie on it.
Is there any, does Lynn have any jurisdiction over this? Over the screen and temporary screen put up? I would assume he does. I just want to make sure.
Yeah, I would assume he does too, because it's a structure, but just so you know, most of these, there's a company in Syracuse that does this 24/7. And there's a franchise called Funflix that does this all over the US. And each of these screens has an engineered anchoring system, mainly guy wires and ground tethers. And so making sure that they're inspected prior to each show, or, putting an extra strap on it, or making sure that the post that's holding it secure is driven at least 3 feet into the ground. I think from a planning perspective as a temporary structure, Lynn could probably take a look at the adequacy of the design and give you an idea of whether it's legit or not.
Yep.
Yeah, we can have them go out and visit the site and just double check that with the applicant and make sure they're everyone's comfortable with the design and execution of that. So that's totally reasonable.
Yeah, there's actually some, whether they're, I don't know if they're whose standards they are, whether they're ETL or whether they're, someone else, but there are standards for this product in terms of it being safety certified to go onto the marketplace like any other manufactured product. And so there should be some manufacturer recommendations that Lynn can get a handle on. If you just want to give them the make and model, you can look at it and see what's required and make sure it's there. Or you can put that in as a required condition, don't know, but these things are remarkably popular. In fact, they use screens this side just at like kids' birthday parties and stuff.
You were planning on using one of the commercially available units then?
No, we purchased one that was essentially it's the kit itself is pretty simple, and you essentially buy 1-inch metal pole conduit essentially that fits into all the fittings, and then the whole thing gets strapped down with pretty decent sized legs to stabilize it.
Yeah, I think we have Lynn take a look at it.
I think that'll do it. Thank you very much, Kevin. We appreciate you coming, and we'll see you at the next meeting.
Sounds good. Thank you so much, Jerry. Have a great day, folks.
Yep. Bye-bye. So now we go to the Maple Ave minor subdivision.
Okay, so we'll admit I'm sorry.
Did we, senior moment here with the screen going in and out, did we vote on the resolution for lead agency?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, my screen went out too. I don't know if everybody else's did.
Well, mine sometimes goes out even when there's no screen to look at, so Personal problem.
I can't tell. I was reading email.
Okay, but we did do lead agency for the pop-ups. Okay, all right.
Yes.
Now I'm confused.
What are you showing us, Guy? Is there a storm coming?
Oh,
Oh, he's watching it.
Wow.
Okay. All right.
It's getting dark out there.
So if we all go screens out, it's probably because of the storm.
Time to quit.
yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, wow. What
Yeah.
happens, CJ, in the event that, say, my internet goes out, you continue the meeting and Al takes over? I mean, is there etiquette that we should all be aware of?
Guy probably can chime in on this. He's attended all these public hearings in the age of COVID trainings.
As long as you maintain a quorum, I think you can continue. You still have to record, you still have to transcribe, and you should try to get back as soon as possible. If you can't, then Al, as the acting chair, can activate an alternative until you get back, if that's the way he wants to go. But someone dropping off wouldn't invalidate the meeting unless you literally lost your quorum. Then you couldn't vote on anything till it came back.
And since we have two alternates here, if we lost a person or two due to a storm, we could enact them for voting purposes, correct?
Correct. The alternates law basically allows them to act whether due to illness, absence, or any other reason you're unable to participate or vote. So even if you were here and for some reason you recused yourself, you can enact an alternate to have the full voting power of the board on the matter, which is almost always advisable because more voices gives you better input, etc.
All right, we'd like to bring Matthew in, Matthew Hartz. Matthew Hartz, hello, welcome.
Hi.
All right, would you like to explain to us what your plan is here?
Sure. So I'm looking at taking the current lot that we purchased, which is about 3¼ acres, and splitting off 2 building lots, and then the house on about 1¼ acres. The 2 building lots would just be just over 1 acre apiece.
And they have required road frontage?
Yes.
Can bring the plat up if you would like.
Yeah, I think the smallest one is 75 feet, which is the parcel C.
On paper, it looks smaller than parcel.
Yeah, our parcel B is 66.08 feet
Oh, okay.
plus 9.2 feet. So that actually makes that one slightly bigger.
Oh, yeah, it's a curve. That's why it looks smaller.
So yeah, that one's just over 75.
Yeah.
All right, does anyone have any questions?
Side yard setbacks. What's the limitation of the structure size that would be allowed on each parcel with the current required side yard setbacks?
Hold on just a moment.
Yeah, they look awful narrow.
This is an R2.
Yes.
Okay. Okay, R2 calls for 1 or 2 family dwellings, 10 on one side and 25 on the other for side.
Ooh.
That gives you a 40-foot width for your building or less.
Including overhangs, right?
Including overhangs, yes.
CJ, can I ask a question? Does it say 10/25?
I think it does, yes. That's
Okay,
correct.
so 10, it can go as low as 10 feet and both sides equal 25.
Oh, I'm reading that wrong.
Yeah,
I'm
15
sorry.
on one side and 10 on the other, sorry.
So it
That's
could
a
be
little
50
bit more
feet.
generous.
So no permanent structures within 10 feet on one side, 15 on the other, which is going to drop you down to 50 feet of usable space in the center of, say, the parcel C. Give or take, plus or minus. As you go back, it looks like it gets wider.
It would seem like it'd be possible to change the configuration to make one into a flag lot so that you get more width for your building, but it seems like they both comply as you've shown them.
Yeah.
The other thing, of course, is you might be looking at a situation where the septic system would have to be in the front yard of the house. Therefore, you'd be using a lift pump. Would you agree, Dean?
Yeah, I guess it would depend on how you configure the lots. Because I'm assuming that the creek is downhill.
I think those lots drop off pretty suddenly from the road.
There, it's pretty aggressive. It's a pretty aggressive slope.
Yeah.
That's all right. It's a nice neighborhood down there. You can just put in a couple small houses. That's all.
Yeah, I had been envisioning kind of continuing that streetscape that's there because all of the houses right now are right up on the edge of the road.
Mm-hmm.
Hmm.
But you'd also have a minimum road setback.
Mm-hmm.
And depending on the design you had to go with for a septic system, you got to remember that is it 100 feet or 150 feet now from a creek or body of water?
I don't
know. It's a question for the health department, but
Yeah,
you could certainly ask.
It's different than the building itself.
But you also have
Larry, if I might, I think it's still 100 feet.
Okay, but there's also
The last I knew it was 100 feet. And
yeah,
that was
also
a couple years ago.
According to the map, there's also a wetland, so you have to clear that by 100 feet as well, don't you, or do you?
I think you do.
Yeah. Yes, you do.
So that's going to be a total of 200 feet?
No.
Oh, okay.
No, it has to be 100 feet back from the wetland. There's not a real usable scale here, but I would estimate 150 to 175 feet from the creek. Still doable. I'm just pointing out limitations that are going to have to be considered.
I do like the idea of maintaining the streetscape.
Do we know what the setback is from the road?
Yep, it's 60 feet from the center line of Maple.
Yep, it's definitely doable. Any more questions? So where do we go from here, CJ? We have a resolution?
Yep, there's a declaration of lead agency resolution in front of you, your consideration, and let the applicant know if there's any changes you want to see in the configuration of the lots. Does this look reasonable?
And have you looked at flag lots, Matt?
I hadn't really looked at the flag lot because I just wasn't sure with the floodplain how much space would be usable in towards the back.
Good point. Well, can I hear a resolution or a motion to accept the resolution to become lead agents?
So moved.
Second.
Sandy and Larry, you're out, Lynn.
It's okay. We're lucky I was muted.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Aye. Opposed? Abstain? All right, we'll take over lead agency, and do we need a public hearing on this?
So our intention would be to set a public hearing for next month's meeting and to assume preliminary and final approval unless we hear comments otherwise from the board.
Do we want to mess up all our careful planning and have it at the same time we're having the other public hearing?
No.
No.
Thank you.
So this will be set for
Enjoy.
the next regular meeting at the end of July?
That's correct. Unless, of course, the board wishes otherwise, but that would be Monday, July 27th.
Okay, Matt?
Yes, that sounds great. Thank you.
Thank you for coming in. We appreciate your attention here.
Should we go through the environmental assessment?
Was that at the end?
You should have received the part one there. Yes.
Do we want to do that tonight, or do we wait until next week, or until the public hearing?
You could certainly do that tonight. You just did lead agency, so you could certainly go through the part one in case there's anything the applicant needs to act on or give additional information on prior to the next meeting.
It
Do
just
we need a public
get it out of the way.
Okay, Dean, did you see anything on the applicant's portion?
This is all very straightforward.
Are we using thicker paper?
I know.
Everything.
I had a question.
Doubled up.
Tom?
Yeah.
Tom?
I had a question about 12B. Is the project site or any portion of it located in or adjacent to an area designated as sensitive for archaeological sites in the New York State Historic Preservation Office Archaeological Site Inventory? And it's checked yes. So I wonder, how does that affect this?
It's probably based on a review of the state website with regard to the mill and the old school and everything down in Ludlow. How does that affect us, CJ?
Well, you can certainly ask the applicant for further information regarding the archaeological resources on site. They can conduct a study.
Seems a little over the top, but does that automatically trigger?
Well, that yes was triggered by the EAF mapper.
Yeah.
So, yeah, someone needs to go to the it used to be, I think it's the CRIS database. It used to be called Sphinx, but the CRIS database, Cultural Resource Inventory, and look up what the specific trigger is, because sometimes all you have to be is within a half a mile of something that's designated as historic. It could be a building. So you're gonna want to know, to the extent that this is within quote unquote the view shed of a historical building, using Larry's favorite word. Is it visible from that historical site, or is if it's an archaeological thing that's underground, has it been previously tested by SHPO, like some of the areas around the town center have been? My guess is that it is the historic buildings or buildings that are eligible for historic designation. So you're going to want to see whether or not this is so close in proximity as to need some mitigation of that impact. My guess is no, but until we know specifically what the item is, it's a bald guess that's utterly unreliable. It's just everything in that area tends to hit a yes, and there's no delineation of what it is. So it's just part one would need a little more work to inform your part two analysis and your part three decision. That's all.
Since I'm one of the town's most historic objects, and I don't recall anything close to that particular section of land other than the fishing access, my guess would be that there isn't anything that close.
Well, the old Methodist church might have something to do down there, right? I don't know if that.
I can look it up right now.
I think that's been
I'm on.
remodeled, but it could come up on something like this as a historic site.
Yeah, this is on the back street, so it's not like you even see it from.
No.
Yeah, the Methodist church is on the west side of the main street, back up around the corners. So I really don't.
It might be within half a mile.
Yeah.
We got Guy and CJ on it, so
I'm looking.
Yeah, I am too.
Okay.
big money being spent.
Okay. I'm not sure exactly. It just shows some buildings, but it's not. Yeah, I don't know what you're seeing, Guy, but I'm seeing.
Yeah, you have to right click and then pull the resource data and correlate the number that they give you to the historical report.
Right.
But
Oh, okay, there's a
if you're
building.
within, like,
Yeah, 22
right,
Maple
so-
Avenue is historic. Okay,
right.
okay. Okay, so it looks to be the buildings actually surrounding. So 22 Maple Avenue. I'm just pulling the report for that right now.
Across the street.
Looks to be, yes, it is. It's right across the street on that corner, and it's been flagged as being historic building. The report's just downloading. And then there's another one on Mill as well. But I guess they have a survey report to them, but they're not actually designated structures, it doesn't look like. So. And the town doesn't have, I don't think we've designated anything locally, right?
Not that I'm aware, but.
Yeah.
Okay, that would be something you'd want to look into, man. Although I don't think that it's going to end up being any kind of problem.
Okay.
Oh yeah, so it shows up on this, the property across the way shows up in this report, which may look familiar to some of you. Town of Lansing historic context. And it looks like it looks like one of the houses, 22 Maple shows up on this list. So we can extract the useful parts of that. Or the applicable parts, I'm sorry. I mean to suggest that any of the report was not useful, the applicable portions. Guy, did you come up with anything other than that?
No,
That's
that's all I'm showing. I would just, you'd want to make sure your line of sight to it. If it's, we just have to determine if it's actually designated or simply eligible for designation. The rules would be slightly different, but the need to mitigate any potential impact wouldn't change.
It says status is not eligible on Chris.
Okay.
It has beautiful blue vinyl siding on it.
That's got to make it historic.
Okay, so we'll look at that report and advise from there.
Are there any other questions on the part one?
No.
Comments? No city water down there, is there?
Yes.
Yes. Yeah.
There is all the way down through there?
Yep.
Yep.
All right, no more comments?
No more comments.
No,
Thank you very much, Matt, again. We'll see you at the July, what's the meeting?
27.
Yep, Monday, July 27th.
27th.
Okay,
Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, good.
Is that it? Then we need Doug. Doug to give us a report.
Well, Larry has a question.
Oh, Larry, sorry.
I sent what should have copied to everybody on an email based on our.
oh, he's frozen again.
Probably that storm coming through North Lansing.
Larry, if you can hear us, if you could type that in a chat. It's a little chat on the bottom of the screen.
Okay, Doug, let's go through a report from you and we'll get back to Larry.
All right, here it is. Thanks. I want to apologize for not being at the last meeting. I worked late and kind of zoned out and had a senior moment. Not that I'm a senior yet, but I'm getting close.
From a senior to a non-senior, you're forgiven.
Appreciated. Our last meeting last Wednesday, no one spoke at the privilege of floor. Most of the reports were in print form. However, Parks and Rec, Pat Terrell, great job doing a lot of work at the park, cleaning boat docks up, and a lot of pavilions are getting new electric and things like that. Just wanted to share that with everybody. They're working really hard down there. Went through our consent agenda. We had several public hearings that we set for proposed local law number 2, codification of local laws, ordinances, and certain resolutions of the town of Lansing and the municipal code and designated code of town of Lansing. Also in that was a resolution for a public hearing for the stormwater report, another resolution for proposed local law 3 of 2020 with the solar and wind energy systems. Another resolution in there establishing highway department building renovation and evaluation committee and appointing members of that committee. A resolution hiring part-time seasonal employees for Park and Rec. On a side note, we had a emergency meeting today. Evidently, either a couple people fell through, whether one had health issues and another one got another job. So we had an emergency meeting hiring somebody for, I believe, July 9th. But we did that so that they could put their 2 weeks notice where they were working and then come to work for us. So Pat's scrambling a little bit at this point. And then we had a resolution in the consent agenda approving budget audit and budget modifications. Report. And then out of the consent agenda, we had a resolution granting New York State authority to perform an adjustment for owner and agreement to maintain facilities adjusted via state-led contract. And a resolution scheduling the public hearing for proposed local law number 4 of 2020 and overriding the tax levy limit. We also had a motion approving the stormwater operation management and reporting an agreement for the Village Circle, Village Solar's planned development area. And that's about all we did, short meeting. So.
Very good.
Yeah, I was a little worried it was gonna be a long meeting, but it didn't end up that way, so.
Are there any questions for Doug? Well, thank you very much, Doug.
Thank you.
I should get to you earlier in the meeting so that you could go take a nap.
Well, it was on the agenda at 4, but that's okay. Once again, you probably had a senior moment, so we'll leave it at that.
Another one.
That's okay. I understand. I'm almost there.
Yeah.
You keep talking like that, though, you might not make it.
Then it won't really matter now, will it? At least to me. So anyway.
Do you have a planning report, CJ?
Yes, I'll spare you all the details of the written planning report. And of course, if you have questions on that, don't
Sure we all
hesitate to
have.
ask. Okay, great. I'm trying to send them in a timely fashion. So just wanted to give you a couple, hopefully cool updates. So remember, we've been talking about town center maybe about 6 months ago. And we talked about how we can move forward design guidelines and wrapping up that site to be able to be more shovel ready and more robust in terms of some of the site work and some of the analysis that was done ahead of time. Well, at the last minute on March 27th, I applied to the Park Foundation for $31,000 to cover the cost of the stormwater study that T.G. Miller had recommended to, I think, some years ago as part of that, and we won the grant.
Yeah.
So we'll be able to move forward with that. Yay. So that's really great. So we won't have to spend too much from our consulting budget this year, maybe if anything. And it does cover the rest of the traffic impact study as well. So I just want to let you know that there's a lot of interesting moving pieces happening. We've been speaking with New York State Office of General Services about the potential for the town to possibly take ownership of the wastewater treatment facility that is at the Lansing Residential Center. As well as the possible conveyance of the Lansing Residential Center to TST BOCES, who has a lot of interest in that as a possible new campus for them. So we're trying to help facilitate that and also get a sense of what the full build out could be if the area could be sewered. So I did just want to let you know that Dave Herrick and I are still thinking through all those pieces and trying to navigate how all of those pieces could come together to serve as the generic environmental impact statement for the town center when you're ready to start moving forward with a development there. In addition, I've enlisted some student help for the summer with the beginning of preparing some design guidelines and anticipating a first draft of those somewhere around your next meeting. Next working meeting. So I'm really excited to share those with you and get some kind of initial feedback on that. His name is Chris. He's a student in city and regional planning. I had a whole bunch of requests for students for the summer looking for work. So I figured this could be a really great opportunity. So yes, nevertheless, so those pieces as far as the town center is concerned are moving forward. And also there is the potential of broadband being able to be routed by the Lansing Town Center. The power plants applied not too long ago, or not the power plant, I'm sorry. The power plant doesn't actually exist as the power plant anymore, but Tompkins County Area Development did apply on behalf of Huron Power to the ARC Power 2020 grant, as you may have seen on the planning report, to be able to bring a dark fiber line, so an open access line from approximately where the Guthrie Clinic is in Dryden, past the airport and up and by Lansing Town Center. So the possibility exists that this area could be served by broadband, water, sewer, and have stormwater planning and other types of infrastructure in place. And so to be really competitive parcels as far as developable land in Tompkins County. So I think it will be really unique. So that's still being thought about and considered. I didn't want you to think that was forgotten. So let me know if you have any questions about any of that.
I do. I have one. I'm not familiar with the wastewater treatment plan at the residential center. What does that entail?
Yeah, so that's a great question. So yeah, so the site over there is actually served by a wastewater treatment facility. So the boys' school and the former Lansing Residential Center. And so the Office of General Services, who owns land in the town, owns the Lansing Residential Center, is considering conveying it to another party. They are interested in doing something else with it. So we're beginning the due diligence to determine whether that would actually be feasible or financially prudent or any of the above for the town to consider taking over that wastewater treatment facility and or the parcel over there. There has been some interest expressed by Parks and Recreation to be able to have access to the gymnasium and the pool that's on site, actually over at the Lansing Residential Center. I'm not sure how familiar you are with it, but it's pretty sizable chunk of land. It's about 24 acres, including a number of buildings. And so that's still at very preliminary stages, but I just figured I would mention it as a possibility.
Does that acreage include the prison? The main part of the prison in the rear?
So that's the Gossett Boys facility, I believe. I can't remember exactly
It
the
was
name
the
of it.
Gossett. It was the Gossett, but now it's something else.
No, it's called Finger Lakes Residential Center, maybe. It has a different name, but yes, that would continue to be a separate facility. And that would be some of the terms of whoever chose to take over the Lansing Residential Center would have to have some interesting memorandums of understanding between them and the facility to be able to allow them to still use the pool once a week and things like that. But Parks and Recreation has expressed some interest in being able to have access to that gymnasium to be able to offer classes over there and the pool too, so.
And that would also give the town ownership or control over the 3 pod residences and the large residential building next to the creek.
If the town chose to pursue the conveyance, I don't think they will. I think TST BOCES is probably the most interested party at this point in the taking over the entire 24-acre parcel, but it's certainly we could have an agreement with them to be able to use those buildings as well. So there's a lot of flexibility, and the library has some interest as well. So it's kind of still a moving target.
Personally, for the town, I don't see anything other than problems and expense. Bringing those, taking a responsibility for bringing any of those buildings up to code for current use, and also maintenance based on long-term maintenance deferral. You know, we wouldn't be getting our bang for the buck.
Yeah, and I believe that's more or less the overall sentiment based on some initial structural evaluations. And Doug could probably speak to this much better, but
we can get it for $1, but it'll be $10 million and $1 to do what we gotta do. I mean, that's my thought. That's my opinion. That's not the board's opinion,
I don't disagree with you.
But I mean, that in that regard, yeah, that's they're in rough shape. And
Yeah.
even 3 new pods that were built in the early 90s have some issues that need to be addressed. So at least in my eyes, I'm not an engineer, but I play one on the radio occasionally.
The whole thing looks like a money pit to me. Just the maintenance of that pool and the maintenance of that gymnasium building, with both of them having been semi-abandoned for 10 years, is
I think those buildings there, or those structures there, Larry, are probably one of the better ones. To be honest, but yeah, that's my opinion. That's not the board's opinion. So
If the town's looking for a pool, they could invest a little money in the Lansing pool or the high school pool. I mean, by paying them rent and things like that to keep that pool open. Just a thought.
I think we put enough money into that pool too, by the way. No,
I think it's important. I mean,
I agree. I don't disagree with that at all, Sandy. But we put there's been a lot of issues with that pool over the years.
I
Yeah.
understand that, but why would we throw in money to a pool that's been,
Exactly.
yeah. So anyways, my thought.
When I was little, I didn't have that pool then. We had to go to the lake and learn how to swim off the dock.
Neither did I, but that doesn't.
Yeah, but you went to the creek.
That doesn't make me recognize how important it is and how many kids have gotten scholarships to go on to college in swimming and diving based
No,
on their.
absolutely. I don't disagree one bit. I know, but we
Well-
put a lot of, you know, that's right. You know, there's a lot of things that go into that building, especially the residential center. So I mean, that's my own opinion. So.
You know, when I was a kid, Doug, we didn't even have the lake. It was just a stream.
It's before Lake Iroquois.
Wow.
That was like 20,000 years ago, Larry.
Yep, I remember it well.
Ice Age, there was no water.
It was too cold. The icebergs were melting. Yeah.
You had to swim at the bottom of Ludlowville Falls.
I've got the scars that prove it.
But you were supposed to jump off.
Nobody said that. They said dive through the waterfall.
Yeah, that's quite the ledge.
Be done here.
Almost. Hold on a
Okay.
second. So we'll keep you posted on many moving parts over there. I did just want to say, Celebration 2017 was when you started both the codification process, which is wrapping up next month, and the solar and wind local law. So
Whoa.
yay,
Woo.
planning board.
Only 3
Guy.
Only 3 years.
Well, we'll try to go a little quicker. But to that end, speaking of not going quicker, the new person that we hired to take Sue's position, Jen Sandstead, has regretfully informed us that she has selected another place to work. So we are going to be functioning a bit, shall we say, remotely. We're going to keep Sue on a little while as we can to be able to do remote meetings. And so if you have anyone who might be interested in working with us here in Code and Planning, please send them our way. We'd be happy to work with them. Oh, and she's out sick for the next week or so too. So
It's only you or Lynn that could have scared her off. Which one was it?
oh, I think it was both. No, I don't know.
Is there a job?
TJ, is that a civil service position?
It's the information aid is how we have it posted currently, but I think we will entertain other posting ideas. We may post some different ones, but yes, it's actually up on the civil service website right now. Yeah.
So I just wanted to mention that in perusing the town of Dryden zoning map and looking at their zoning regs, they really go down very detailed. You know, we've got people up on Emmons Road who are asking to have their neighborhood more restrictive, and I would say I would just encourage board members to take a look at what Dryden's got going on compared to what we have going on in terms of the level of restriction and, you know, the parcel by parcel zoning that they've got going on over there. It may be a little bit too much for what Lansing wants, but it could be, we want to move more towards that direction.
PDA, but it's up to the board.
I was going to say Lynn had mentioned using the PDA tool to do that, and I think that I also think that would be appropriate for that area rather than parcel by parcel. Besides, if you recall, the entire RA zone is going to be changed in the new zoning ordinance to be much more restrictive, and the remaining RA portions are going to be around the hamlet centers that were left, according to the potential zoning map in the comprehensive plan.
So that's my point, is Dryden has kind of already done some of the things that we're looking at potentially doing.
So we should all look, what he's suggesting is we should all take a gander at it if we get a chance. And we can try to pull the best parts of whatever off it.
Sure, and then 3 years from now, we could have a new zoning law.
Oh.
All
Okay,
right.
well, we're trying here to stay on top of everything. So we will, to that end, talk about the land use audit on Monday, July 13th. Hopefully we can start to get that wrapped up and head towards getting a report out to the town board about our findings.
Does anyone else have any comments to make tonight?
Sorry I kept cutting out on you, but I think you all got the point because I did send the email.
Okay, we did not, and perhaps you would go over it real quick for us.
Okay, I did a little research and noted that VRBO has 14 short-term rentals listed within the town of Lansing. And one of them, oddly enough, is somebody that came before us opposing short-term rentals in the marina. So I guess it all depends on, whose gander is
Who's
playing
ox
with who's goose.
Not in my backyard.
Yeah.
Unless I do it.
But it is curious. And Sandy, to answer your email, I didn't check the Airbnb. These were just the listings that were on VBR or VRBO, but I suppose some of them could be multiple listed. VRBO is usually for longer term rentals, 3 days up to a week.
So there's a platform called AirDNA. Just type in airdna.co and it's kind of a analytics, and you can search by neighborhood and it'll show you all the VRBO and Airbnb listings in the town of Lansing. So you can see them all at once swoop.
Good to know.
Okay.
Your DNA?
Yep, here, let me just show you. Let's see. So, oops. Yeah, it's this one right here. AirDNA, so you could just say New York. And it'll give you kind of a, no, we don't need to do this. Well, anyway. Oh, I already have an account.
You've been on too much.
Yeah, they're kicking me off now, I guess. Okay, well, anyway, it gives you a map and an overview of occupancy rates and typical costs and how frequently they're rented, all that kind of stuff. It's interesting.
36 active rentals.
There you go. Yeah.
Does it include regular B&Bs?
If they're not listed on either of those platforms, no, not on that particular website anyway.
It said 56% are Airbnbs and 44 are VRBOs.
We got 100 in the town.
Well, no, 56%, 44%
Right.
equals 14.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's amazing what they charge per night for some of them.
All right, anybody else have any more comments?
No.
In that case, the meeting's adjourned.
Thank you.
All right.
Have a good night.
Okay.
Bye.
I assume our next meeting will be on Zoom also.
Excellent.
Yeah. Okay. Great.
Okay,
Bye.
See you then. Bye.
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 bye-bye.